Good day, everyone, and to our loyal viewers, welcome to our show. Share your philosophy. For today's episode, we are going to have our guest to discuss the philosophy of education. But first, we are going to tell what is philosophy of education. Philosophy of education involves the union of two distinct yet interwoven and equally important disciplines which supplement and complement each other. While philosophy analyzes life and ending phenomena, natural or man-made, and gives a critical and contemplative view of life, education is considered a means that provides a person with a way to develop a personal perspective or point of view on matters pertaining to his or her daily life. Education trains one to formulate a philosophy or belief distinct from others, applying it to attain one's ultimate goals of happiness and satisfaction. And to know more about the philosophies of education, let us all welcome our first guest who will be discuss what is constructivism, and let us welcome Miss Juji Lasagas and Joren Lumusan. So, please have a seat. So, good day, Miss Lasagas and Miss Lumusag. So, what can you say to our fellow viewers today?
Good morning, everyone. It's our pleasure to be here today.
How are you today?
Of course, we're fine.
So, without no more further ado, let's start with the first question. What is constructivism?
Constructivism is the theory that says learners to construct knowledge rather than just passively take in information. Constructivism is a learning theory states that learners can construct new meanings and understanding by integrating new information, learn from new experiences with prior knowledge gained from the past experiences. So, in constructivism, knowledge is always constructed, and knowledge is built upon existing our ideas. So, here, the students' previous knowledge, experiences, beliefs, and more insights are all important foundations for their continued learning.
So, Miss Lumusag, what can you add on?
Yes, I agree with my partner's idea that constructivism is a philosophy of education that says learner learn that says people learn through experiences, not through hearing of someone's information. For example, Kinan did not understand physics when his teacher tries to explain it. But if he faced physics problems in his everyday life, he might understand it. For this example, constructivism points out that experiential learning is more powerful than discussions.
So, Miss Lasagas?
Constructivists seeks to develop intrinsically motivated and dependent learners adequately equipped with learning skills for them to be able to construct knowledge and make meaning of them. So here, motivation is the key to learn because students cannot learn if they are not willing to reflect their pre-existing knowledge and experiences. So, the crucial role of educators here is to motivate their students to engage in learning journey. In constructivist classroom, the teachers provide students data and experiences that allow them to hypothesize, predict, manipulate objects, pose questions, research, investigate, imagine, and invent. It promotes dialogical exchange of ideas among learners and between teachers and learners.
Okay, so the next question is what factors influence in constructivism?
For me, the major factors that influence learning is learners' previous knowledge, learners' motivation, and learners' characteristics such as beliefs, prejudice, and fears.
So, what is the most important things you learned about constructivist theory?
The most important things in constructivist theory is that in the learning process, the learner should get the emphasis. Learners must actively develop their knowledge, not others. Learners must be responsible for their learning outcomes.
So, next is how does constructivist teacher motivate students to learn?
A constructivist teacher motivates their students through encouraging thoughtful reflection based on their experience, learn to analyze real-world issues, learn how to investigate, and build communication skills.
Okay, so next is constructivist teaching effective?
Yes, constructivism has been a very powerful model for explaining how knowledge is produced in the world as well as how students learn.
So that was all the question, and thank you for coming here as our guest, and I hope our viewers learn something about the philosophy of constructivism. So I'm glad to have you here, and thank you. So we are done with our first guest, and now may I call to our second guest to discuss or share what is essentialism. So please welcome our second guest, Mr. Manayon. So Mr. Manayon, thank you for coming here, and how are you today?
It's been an honor to be here on your show. I'm fine, thank you.
So now let's come with the first question. What is essentialism?
Essentialism is education assert that common and essential ideas and skills belonging to a certain culture should be taught to all citizens at the same level at especially primary school level.
The next is what is to be teach in essentialism?
So, the essentialism believe that teachers should try to embed traditional moral values and virtues such as respect for authority, perseverance, fidelity to duty, consideration for others, and practicality and intellectual knowledge that students need to become model citizens.
So thank you, Mr. Manayan. That was all our my question for essentialism, and I'm glad that you came here and as our guest. So thank you very much. With the first and second guest, and now let's proceed to the third guest, who will be sharing to our fellow audience what is progressivism. So now may I call on Miss Nietes and Miss Nakwa. Please have a seat. So I'm glad that the both of you come here and accepted our invitation to share what is progressivism. So I'd like to ask how are you feeling today?
Very good.
Okay, so our first question is what is progressivism?
Progressivists believe that education should focus on the whole child rather than on the content or the teacher. This educational philosophy stresses that students should test ideas by active experimentation. Take Jonah for example. When Jonah was in school, the teacher was the focus of the classroom, and the teacher stood in the front and told the student what he or she wanted them to know. So the center of the gravity from the classroom was with the teacher. Everything revolved around him or her. But in a progressive classroom, the center of the gravity is in its child. That is, progressive education revolves around the child's needs. So, not around the teacher or a prescribed curriculum. If teacher wants to teach fraction, but one of the students is still struggling with basic division, the teacher will have to work that students in division until he or she is ready to move on to fractions.
So that was nice explanation. And our next question is how does progressivism influence education?
Progressivism teaching philosophy is meant to actively engage students in their own learning to build skills that promote the ability to problem solve, think critically, and develop a deep understanding of the subject.
So thank you. And the next question is what is the role of progressivism in the philosophy of education?
So, sorry. The role of progressivism in the philosophy of education is that a progressivism is very student-centered philosophy of education. Rooted in pragmatism, the education focus of progressivism is on engaging students in real world. So it involves a problem-solving activities in a democratic and cooperative learning environment.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
the next question is how progressivism is beneficial to all learners?
Progressivism is beneficial to all learners, is a philosophy of education that emphasizes the need for students to learn through their own experiences and be actively involved in their own learning process.
So that that's all, and I am so grateful that you have come to our invitation, and I hope to see you next time for some new learnings. And that's all. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. So now we are done with the first to the third guest, and now we are going for our fourth guest, who will be sharing the perennialism. So I'd like to welcome you all, Miss Betterlyn Panawan. Please have a seat, Miss Panawan. So it's been my pleasure to be here with you, sharing the perennialism. So how are you?
Well, I'm very fine.
So,
Thank you for inviting me.
So, for the first question, Miss Panawan, what is perennialism, and please share it to our audience.
So, perennialism values knowledge that transcends. This is a subject-centered philosophy. The goal of a perennialist educator is to teach students to think rationally and develop minds that can think critically.
So, thank you. For the second question is to share for the audience what are characteristics of perennialism.
So, the characteristics of perennialism is perennialist believes that the focus of education should be the ideas that have lasted over centuries. They believe that ideas are as relevant and meaningful today as when they were written. They recommend that students learn from reading and analyzing the works by history's finest thinkers and writers.
So, thank you. For the next question is, what is the role of the students and perennialism?
So, the students are supposed to learn the truth as taught to them by teacher. Since truth does not change, students' interests or experiences are not reflected in what is taught in a perennialist classroom.
So, that was all, Miss Panawan, and I'm so thankful for you to come here in our show to share our audience about perennialism. I hope to see you next time, and thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome.
So now we're done with our fourth guest, and now let's move on the fifth guest who will be sharing to our audience what is behaviorism. So please welcome our fifth guest, Miss Paredes. So please ma'am, proceed. So it's been a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for accepting our invitation. How are you today?
I'm fine.
So, Miss Paredes, please share to our audience what is behaviorism.
Behaviorism, it focuses on the idea that all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment. Behaviorism, it is a theory and animal psychology can be objectively studied through observable actions or behaviors rather than feelings and thoughts that cannot be observed.
So Miss Paredes, thank you for answering the first question. So, can you please give our audience some examples about behaviorism?
Okay? An example of behaviorism is when a teacher rewards her class or certain students with a party or special treat at the end of the week for good behavior throughout the week. The same concept is used with punishment. The teacher can take away the privileges if the student misbehaves.
So, thank you, Miss Paredes. So, I hope our audience learned some stuff about behaviorism, and thank you for coming here, and I hope to see you next time. We are done with all 5 guests, and now we are on our last but not the least, our last and final guest, who will be sharing the linguistic philosophy. So, may I call on Miss Gwyneth Puno. Please have a seat, ma'am. So, it's been an honor to be here with you to ask and share our audience about the philosophy of linguistics. So, how are you today, Miss Puno?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm also fine and thank you. So, Miss Puno, what is linguistic philosophy? And please share it to our audience.
Okay, so linguistic philosophy is the study of human speech. It is the nature, structure, and the development of language. So many or all philosophical problems can be solved or dissolved by paying closer attention to language or our everyday language. So linguistic philosophy helps us to develop our communication skills, helps the individual express ourselves, get our ideas across in a way that the person that we are talking to can receive the message and can understand us clearly, make us be fluent in languages.
So, thank you. So, the next question, Miss Puno, is what to teach in linguistic philosophy?
So learners should be taught to communicate and send message clearly. Use message in a correct, grammatically coherent way. Expand our vocabulary so we may understand what others are going to communicate with us. Learn to communicate in three ways, which is verbal, nonverbal, and paraverbal.
So,
So verbal refers to the context of our message, a range of our words, so the way we express our words, that is what verbal is. The next one is nonverbal. It refers to our body language. Our body language, the way we talk to people, the way we move our body when we speak to people, that is what nonverbal is. Paraverbal next is the way we say, the tone, the pacing, and the volume of our voices.
so can you add some?
So the last one is how to teach in linguistic philosophy. So the most effective way to teach in linguistic philosophy is experiential way and observation, is which we allow the person to have the freedom of speech to express their thoughts freely and observe how they communicate. After that, you can give them feedback on ways they need improving and compliment them in what they are good at, what they could have developed more in their communication.
So, that was all my question, Miss Puno, and I'm so thankful that you came here to and share our audience about the linguistic philosophy, and I hope to see you next time, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So that was all for today's episode, the philosophy of education, and I hope our audience learned and understood about the philosophies of education, and I hope for our next episodes to stay tuned and always watch this show, and goodbye, and that's all, and this is Share Your Philosophy.